on the strength of spiritual energy, not the energy of maintaining his body, because he was neglecting it. And then second, Prabhupada said, his body was trembling because his body was so weak. He wasn't disturbed by that. He wasn't feeling pangs of hunger. How is that possible? Because he was so absorbed in thought of Krishna and chanting of the holy name, etc., maintaining his vows in Krishna consciousness. He was so absorbed. That was sustaining his life, not food. So this was Sudama's condition. And in full knowledge, he and his wife, detached from anything temporary, not artificially, but naturally so. And the wife was not anxious for her personal comfort, but she felt concern for her husband, who was such a pious Brahmana. She trembled due to her weak health, and although she did not like to dictate to her husband, she spoke as follows. You know, it's kind of like the nagging wife. Those of you that are married, you know about that one. So, when she spoke in a very learned way, and I'm not going to go through all of what she said, but she just, in a few sentences, she, anticipating that her husband would have reservation to do what she wanted, she answered before he responded to her, you know, the answer. Basically, her request is, please go to Krishna. I can't, it's too much for me to see you in this condition. You're a saint, and you're a Brahmana, and you're a very dear friend of Krishna. 1, 2, 3. And Krishna maintains all living entities. Krishna's maintaining the Yadu dynasty, no problem. What's a, little Brahmana? No problem. So you're going to feel some reservation. But Krishna's maintaining the whole Yadu dynasty in Dwarka. So please go. Please go and visit Krishna. And her husband is thinking, I'm not qualified. Even if you think that you're not qualified, you're a Brahmana. And Krishna holds Brahmanas very dear to him. Well, I'm not very elevated, I'm a compromised Brahmana. Even if you're thinking you're compromised, Krishna maintains all living entities. So even if you, then I'll be embarrassed. I shouldn't go and ask Krishna for something. That's not a relationship. Well, just go and don't say anything. She suggests, Krishna says, just go, don't say anything. He's omniscient. He'll see your condition, and he'll take care of the situation. Of course, he could take care of the situation even remotely. And very learned presentation she makes. He doesn't say no. He doesn't say yes. So, Shukadeva Goswami says, day after day, those of you who are married, day after day, she kept saying the same thing, broken record. So, he understood this is something that's really important to her. For me, it's not important to me. I'd rather not do it at all. But it's very important to her. So he starts weighing, well, if I do go, then I'll get to see my dear friend Krishna. And I don't have to say anything, I'll just see my dear friend Krishna. So gradually he moved from not saying yes or no to saying yes to his dear wife. So before going, he said, I can't go see my friend without a gift. But they didn't have anything in the house. So she had to go to a neighbor and receive from a neighbor some charity of some broken rice. And she put the broken rice in the cloth, took the corners of the cloth and made a little bag, and gave him the bag to take as a gift to Krishna. And poor Bandar, walking distance is more than a day. It's quite a distance. So he's walking and walking, anticipating Krishna from a balcony. He's seated on the bed of Rukmini, and Rukmini is also there, and other attendants are also there, just having some discussion. And he sees Sudama, his dear friend. So Krishna stands. This is what you do when you see a respected person. I mean, cultured people do that. In the West, people have no culture. But cultured people, this, you know, the vestige in the West is in a courtroom. Probably have the same thing in India. But everyone's seated, and then the judge comes in. And the attendant in the courtroom says, everyone rise. And in America, if you don't rise, you're put in jail. It's a law. You have to, because he's the respected judge. So Krishna rose. He saw Sudama's coming. And he's my dear friend. And he is a Brahmana. And Sudama was then brought directly before Krishna. And Krishna not only rose, but Krishna sat Sudama in his seat and literally worshipped him with ghee lamp and sandalwood paste and musk and so many things, betel nuts, and, you know, like deity worship. Bathed his feet and sprinkled the water from his feet onto his head and his family member's head to sanctify them, the foot wash from a Brahmana. Feeling good fortune has come to my home because a Brahmana of Sudama's caliber has come. Now, Krishna is exhibiting, in this case, the culture of a Kshatriya respecting a Brahmana. And Krishna observes, although he's the personality of Godhead, and all of the other residents of Dwarka are perfectly realized souls, they observe Varnashram. It's not that because they're liberated, they don't. It's not that because we're devotees, we don't need to have any consideration for Varnashram because that's material. Even in the spiritual, I'll say it the third time, even in the spiritual world, it's observed. So what to speak of, what should our position be in relation to such standards and culture? And after receiving him respectfully, and Rukmini is also engaged, assisting her good husband with a chamra, fanning. She's the goddess of fortune. She's Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Fanning Sudama with a chamra. The people in the palace that were seeing all this going on were just amazed, because here's this poor Brahmana, so poor, his cloth was old and tattered and faded, and the commentary says his body was so thin that the veins of his body were sticking through the skin. And who is this person? Krishna stood, and embraced him like a brother, warmly. So first was the worship as the Kshatriya worshipping the Brahmana. Now he's treating him like his brother. So the other residents of Dwarka were saying, who is this person who looks like, really? He's a poor person. But Krishna loves him like his brother. How many austerities has he undergone to get this kind of affection and embrace of Krishna? In contrast, for example, King Drupad also went to school with Drona. And they became fast friends because they went to school together. And Drona said, when I become king, I'll take care of you, I'll maintain you. And then they graduated from school and went back, and Drupad became married and became the king, and Drona became married and was so poor he couldn't even provide milk for his son. So he'd take rice flour and stir it in with water, and the other children were laughing at him. Oh, you poor Brahmin. So he went to his friend, Drona, who just rejected him. You, get out of here. Quite different standard that Krishna observed when Sudama came looking like a ragamuffin, pauper, with such affection, because he's a qualified Brahmana and he's a very dear devotee and friend. So, Varnashram exchange, friendship exchange, and then next, Krishna begins a whole discussion. Well, I want to read something. Krishna says to Sudama, even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires. Nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. I am well aware of this. Having renounced all material propensities, the say yes to Krishna message, which spring from the Lord's illusory energy, some people, like you, Sudama, execute worldly duties with their minds undisturbed by mundane desires. Some persons in that category, unattached persons, haven't the least desire to accumulate wealth and prosperity for sense gratification, but sometimes they are found to collect money just to exhibit the exemplary life of a householder. This is advice for ISKCON householders. They act as I do to instruct the general populace. They show how, by proper distribution of wealth, one can become an ideal householder and at the same time a great devotee. Such ideal householders are to be considered followers of my footsteps. In other words, so Krishna had this like Vaikuntha standard of opulence in Dwarka, but he was totally, one of his opulences of renunciation was in full swing. And those who are followers of Krishna can do the same. Careful if your heart is not pure, because if you have wealth, it's easy to become attached to the wealth and proud of the wealth and the enjoyer of the wealth and fall into Maya. So better to be on the safe side, not too much attached, not too much detached. And focused on bhakti as you're conducting your affairs, in this case, household affairs. Very valuable instruction for householders in this whole section, how to deal with having things. Well, don't have things, that's one way. And then you have things, and then you're at risk. So how to not be at risk? Attachment to bhakti. How does that grow? By this process of hearing and chanting. This pastime, I'm not going to go through it because of time. This pastime with Sudama coming to visit Krishna is narrated in Gopal Champu in a very interesting way. Like someone asked, how come these narrations are different than the Bhagavatam? Well, Gopal Champu describes it in a different way. The person's narrating Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka are two disciples of Narada Muni who are speaking to the Brijvasis about Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka. You know, sometimes it's the other way. Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka, his associates in Dwarka are hearing about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Anyway, it's very, very beautiful. The essence is Krishna is very attached to Vrindavan. As the pastimes are being narrated, it becomes very clear. Gopal Champu is helping the reader understand the mood of Krishna. Even when he leaves Vrindavan and goes to Mathura and he enters into the school of Sandipani Muni. Before that, he receives Gayatri or Upanayana because he's a little boy and he hasn't received initiation. So Gargamuni gives him the sacred thread and mantra. It's a detail. Krishna, he's just attached to the cowherd boys. They're the same age, so he wants to invite them. Rohini comes, and she wants Mother Yashoda to come. She wants the ceremony to be performed in Braja before Mother Yashoda. And the residents of Mathura aren't so keen on that. They see Krishna as their relative, and they don't see the same Braja connection. So Rohini stays silent, but her heart is with Mother Yashoda. Krishna sends a message through the florist that gave him this nice garland in Mathura to Nanda Maharaj. And Nanda Maharaj, I wish to have my sacred thread ceremony in your presence, but our relatives over here, the Yadus, they want it over here. Could you do this? Could you arrange for all my friends who are my expansions and like as good as me, have them on the same day, at the same time, receive their Upanayana, and then through them I'll receive my Upanayana in Braja. So Nanda does it. Anyway, then it's time to choose the school, and Krishna considers, well, the best teacher would be Vyasadeva and other similar people, but they understand I'm the personality of Godhead, so they're not going to want to be my teacher. I have to find somebody that's not as qualified as them. An ideal person would be one who has realized impersonal Brahman. Fully knowledgeable in the Vedas, realized in the impersonal Brahman, and a worshipper of Lord Shiva. And he knew of Sandipani Muni. So Krishna selected, I'd like to go to school of Sandipani Muni, and he went basically incognito, meaning because he just killed Kamsa, he knew that Kamsa has buddies. And if they know that Krishna's gone, then they may come and try to attack the members of the Yadu dynasty. So best if I go off to school, nobody knows where I've gone. So no ceremony, no procession. I'll just go barefoot with Balaram. No conveyance, no big fanfare. So quietly he went, and he entered the school of Sandipani Muni, because he's now speaking with Sudama about that experience that they had together, and details of what that experience is. Back to the Bhagavatam. So he's discussing
with Sudama about now their friendship when they were in school together. Krishna says, "Certainly, O Brahmana, of all the followers of the Varnashram system, those who take advantage of the words that I speak in my form as the spiritual master easily cross over the ocean of material existence. Such persons best understand their own true welfare." So now he's moving the position of friend or the Kshatriya and the Brahmana, and he's taking the position of the personality of Godhead. Because I give instructions to everybody. I give instructions to the Brahmanas who give instructions to the Kshatriyas, and he's just moving, because Sudama knows this already. Sudama's a devotee and a friend, so friendship is part of their relationship, but he's in full knowledge. So now Krishna is speaking with the voice of the personality of Godhead. There's long commentary. So he says that the father becomes the initial spiritual master. And then with Diksha, there's another spiritual master. But the one who gives instructions to the Diksha folks and the whole world, that's the superlative person. And Krishna is saying, that's me. Anyone who performs that function, that's me. They're performing on my behalf. They're the same as my body. Whew. Then he moves out of that position and starts speaking about the good old days when they were in school together. Do you remember what happened to us when we were living with our spiritual master? So the Sandipani Muni's wife requested the boys to go gather firewood. And in the winter season, generally it doesn't rain, but this occasion, a particular day, torrential rain, big winds, they got lost, it was flooding. So they went for high ground and they were lost in the forest. And the rain kept coming, the sun set, it was dark, they couldn't find their way. They were quite happy because they were in each other's company, taking shelter under a big tree. And meanwhile, back in the ashram, Sandipani Muni's in big anxiety because these two boys went out to gather firewood and they didn't come back. So as soon as the sun rose the next morning with all the students, they went together to find Sudama and Krishna. That's a nice activity, looking in the forest for Krishna. Hey Radhe Vrajadevi Ke. So he was doing that. And then he found them. And he was so relieved. And Sandipani Muni said, "Oh my children, you have suffered so much for my sake. The body is most dear to every living creature, but you are so dedicated to me that you completely disregarded your own comfort." That's what a servant does. They're not interested in their own comfort. They're interested in the interest of the master. Now, if one is not in the mood of a servant, everything is weighed and measured in terms of how comfortable I feel. Sandipani Muni is appreciating that's not you too. This indeed is the duty of all true disciples. It's directly spoken, verse from the Bhagavatam. To repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. You boys are first-class brahmanas, and I am satisfied with you. Then he gives them a benediction, unasked for benediction. Here's my benediction. Two things. May all your desires be fulfilled. And May the Vedic mantras you have learned never lose their meaning for you in this world or the next. The commentary says, just like food, there's a statement in Sanskrit that after 3 hours, the taste of the food is lost. Similarly, the potency and the meaning and the efficacy of mantras that one receives may be dissipated after time unless one is Krishna conscious. So the benediction is, may you always remember, maintain your Krishna consciousness. Of course, he's Krishna, so that's not so difficult. But that's how we, as devotees, can maintain the efficacy, the fullness of the purpose of the mantras that we've received by the benediction and the blessing of the spiritual master. It's really nice. Krishna continued. We had many similar experiences while living in our spiritual master's home. Both of us can realize that without the blessings of the spiritual master, no one can be happy. By the mercy of the spiritual master and by his blessings, one can achieve peace and prosperity and be able to fulfill the mission of human life. Commentary says, this is the Say Yes to Krishna message. Inconveniences, difficulties, hardships, and all things that move in that direction were actually an expression of the Lord's mercy to teach us the importance of service to the spiritual master. So Krishna is using the incident to explain to Sudama, for our benefit, the importance of, quote, sacrifice for the spiritual master. Because by so doing, Krishna's mercy comes into the life of that person, and that's what we're after. So how do we get it? Krishna's mercy. Steadfastly, not thinking of our own comfort and well-being, and our mind says this and our senses say that, thinking of just exactly as Prabhupada did. Thinking of fulfilling the instructions of the spiritual master. Hearing all this, Sudama replies. In language that says, Sudama's understanding Krishna as the personality of God. He's speaking in these different voices, the Kshatriya and the Brahmana, friend and friend. Now he's speaking the message of the personality of Godhead. That's Sudama. He sees Krishna as the personality of Godhead, who's so kind to him. He's acting as his very dear friend. And so in this way, they're carrying on discussion throughout the afternoon. And the evening is now coming. And Krishna wants to have some fun. So he sees Sudama's holding this bag of broken rice behind his back and says, so, did your wife send some nice edibles for me? Can I see? And he doesn't want him even to see, but Krishna sees. So Krishna snatches the bag from his hand, opens up the bag and starts taking some morsels from the bag. When he reaches for the second one, Rukmini catches his hand and says, she doesn't say this is unfit for you, it's inferior quality, don't take it. You deserve much better than that. She doesn't say anything like that. What she says is, what does she say? This is more than enough, O soul of the universe, to secure him, Sudama, an abundance of all kinds of wealth in this world and the next. After all, one's prosperity simply depends on your satisfaction. It's a very, it's like a classic piece of the whole Sudama story. He came to ask from Krishna. He didn't ask for anything from Krishna, nor did Krishna ask him to ask. But Krishna took from him and was fully satisfied. Not because of it's very similar, different, but very similar to Krishna's visiting the home of Vidura when he went to Hastinapur. And he went to the home of Vidura, and Vidura was not wealthy. He didn't have royal opulence in his home. He was living very simply. And his wife offered him different versions of the Mahabharata, bananas. But she was so excited, she offered him the banana peel, and Krishna ate the banana peel instead of the banana, and was fully satisfied. He wasn't interested in opulence. The opulence was being offered by Duryodhana, and he said, no, thank you. Krishna is pleased by the love with which we offer something, not the something. We want to offer nice somethings, but the nice something isn't the essence, it's the love with which we offer that something. I'll tell a little story, and then we'll get right back to this and we'll finish. Once upon a time, I was traveling. And I went to a place where it was one of those overnight flights, and it came in at, some ungodly hour, early in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I can't sleep on planes. I can sleep in cars, but I can't sleep in planes for some reason. So when I got there, I was like, and the ride from the airport to the home, it was just getting to be around time for Mangal Arti. And so it was one of those countries that you can't wear devotional clothes. You have to wear the other kind, and a hat and the whole thing. So when I reached the house, I wanted to change and get into a dhoti and tilak and everything. So as I was putting on my dhoti, a little girl, one of the family members' little girl, she didn't even knock on the door, tying my dhoti. She comes in and wants to give me a gift. I said, okay, thank you very much. Let me finish putting my dhoti on. And I looked inside after I put my dhoti on a tilak. What's inside was some strings of beads of different sizes and different colors. It was a gift from this little girl. It wasn't at all artistic, and what am I going to do with beads? But to this day, there was the happiness was her making some offering. Sometimes kids do that. They make a drawing during class, and it's really important to them that you see their drawing and acknowledge the drawing they spent the whole class making for you. So it's not the item itself, it's the love with which the item is being offered. Just like Vidura's wife. Or here it's Sudama's wife. And Sudama carrying the gift from his wife that had to be borrowed from the place next door. So Krishna was fully satisfied, and with that full satisfaction, it said, Krishna was considering, I know why he came, but I also know that he's embarrassed to ask why he came. And if I gave him if I asked him, he'll have to tell me. so I won't even ask him. But the purpose for which he came, which is to relieve the anxiety of his wife, easily I'll take care of it. So he spent the night, and the next morning he's walking from Dwarka. I mean, there's detail. He has to get to Dwarka, it's an island. So he had to cross a bridge and all the way back to Porbandar. As he's going back, his Say Yes to Krishna message is like this. Krishna is so kind. He didn't even ask me why I came. Because if he had asked me why I came, I would have had to tell him. Because I'm a Brahmana. I couldn't lie. And if I told him, then surely Krishna would give me abundant facility. And then I'd become proud. Oh, I have so much facility. And I'm very special. I'm Krishna's dear friend. So knowing that I have this tendency for pride, Krishna didn't even ask me, because he must have known. He's omniscient. He's the personality of Godhead. He's the supersoul within the heart of every living being, and that supersoul is my dear friend. So he didn't ask me. Krishna is very kind. All the way back, Krishna is very kind. And when he got, you know the story, he got to his home and he couldn't see his home. It was just a few days ago. Instead, this big palace instead of his home. Very, very opulent, and these opulently dressed people came out of the big palace, and one lady he didn't even recognize, but his wife recognized him because he was the same bedraggled, Sudama. Who are you? Oh, you're my wife. Yeah. When she spoke, he could understand that was her, but looking at her didn't even look the same because she was so nicely, gorgeously dressed and ornamented and so forth. And he asked, what happened to our house? And she said, well, I just assumed that you had asked Krishna and Krishna did this, and so you won't have to be in this impoverished condition anymore because you're his dear devotee. Then Sudama understood. Although he had aversion, that kind of renunciation, he had aversion to opulence. He came to see Krishna because of his affection for his wife, and so Krishna made this arrangement, thinking Krishna is very kind. And for the rest of his life, he continued sleeping on the floor and not living in luxury. His clothes changed into nice clothes, just like he didn't even have to get dressed, it just changed. Same as the palace just manifesting itself. But he kept himself in this detached condition because that was his heart, although he was in the place of opulence. So what's the summary message? The Akinchana person, going back to Bhaktisiddhanta's description, can have or have not. And either way, they're very peaceful and happy, have or have not. Prabhupada taught us those lessons from his own personal example. I'll just give two little examples. One, I'll try to say them quickly. There was a particular point in time where the devotees were requesting Prabhupada, could you pose for pictures that we can put on the altar? We have a photographer, he's a professional photographer, can you do that? So Prabhupada agreed. And then Prabhupada was the choreographer. He said, I want 2 photos. And one of them was to be taken outside. Maybe you've seen the picture. Behind him is this huge tree. It's in the west, not a banyan tree, but a huge tree with lots of shade. And Prabhupada stood right at the front edge of where the shade was. So his body was with lots of light, and behind him is something dark. Contrast. It's like very smart. And Prabhupada dressed, holding his danda, just an uttariya, lightly dyed, and no kurta and dhoti, like the austere Swami, standing outside with grass and tree and shade. And then, the photographer finished up that photo shoot. Then Prabhupada went inside and he orchestrated, I want a purple velvet backdrop. And he then changed into brightly dyed silk with kurta. And the devotee that was describing this to me said Prabhupada came out after changing his clothes, put his hand over his head like this, and did a little pirouette, turned around very slowly, like I don't know, and smiled, just like, look at me. And then said, he was taking the request for a photograph to give instruction. He said, just see, in service to Krishna we can accept anything. We can accept a very simple situation, we can accept a very opulent situation. Our mind is not attracted or repulsed by either one. For Krishna's service we can accept anything. Then he stood there, and there's that purple velvet backdrop behind him. And then there's another one. I've told this many times because it took place right here in Vrindavan. It's appropriate. And we're also running out of time, so I'll end with this. Before Prabhupada's Samadhi was constructed, that area was just open. And Prabhupada went from his quarters towards the gate every morning a little bit around 6 o'clock, just before 6 o'clock, to begin his morning walk, and would come back at 7 o'clock for Guru Puja and then class. So commonly, he would walk out the front gate, make a right, and there weren't all those shops and rickshaws and noise and dirt. It was just agricultural land, left and right, all the way down. So it's a long walk going down. And one particular morning, he got to a grove of trees. And he asked, what is this? And didn't even wait for a response. He just started walking a little path that went through the grove of trees. And his mood that particular morning was the mood of renunciation, saying how nice it is to live in Vrindavan. One can live a very simple life, just depending upon nature and depending upon God. And whatever is supplied by nature, one can accept as one's edibles, and then the balance of the day, just be engaged in thoughts of Krishna, chanting and hearing about Krishna. He went over to a tree and pulled on, there was something hanging from a tree, asked somebody, is this edible? And saying, you become familiar with what's in the forest, and all your necessities are there, nature supplies. One devotee, won't mention his name, he was in his bare feet, and he stepped on a thorn, and he started hopping to keep up with the morning walk, and Prabhupada stopped and said, why are you dancing like that? And Prabhupada said, I stepped on a thorn. Prabhupada said, why didn't you wear your shoes? He said, well, I was in a hurry to get the morning walk. He said, don't be negligent. This body is meant for Krishna's service. Go back and get your shoes. Then kept walking, and he kept walking to a place where there's like a kind of a drop-off, and over the other side of the drop-off, Prabhupada pointed with his cane, see that house? Behind the house, there's a cow. And if the mendicant goes to the householder the time for milking of the cow and has his kamandalu, surely they will give him some milk. So the milk and whatever edibles, and then economic business for the day finished. Vrindavan is such a nice place. Just like in that mood of glorifying a life of renunciation. And that I took it was purposeful. He stopped, we're in the middle of this forest area in this mood, and he turned to Brahmananda and said something to the effect, did you receive the $50,000? Did you count it? Did you put it in the bank? I want to see that it goes for paying for the printing of the next publication. Please verify, get a receipt, and like all this business talk. And then, did a 180 and said, yes, living in Vrindavan is so nice. Life of simplicity. Then, literally, we're happy in this circumstance, we're happy in that circumstance, because we're interested in service to Krishna, that's all. And service to Krishna can look like this, and service to Krishna can look like that. The essence is Krishna bhakti, wanting to be in Krishna's service, whatever arrangement. That's the say yes to Krishna message. Exactly what Sudama. Having nothing, having opulence. He was happy, and he was happy. And if the opulence had been taken away, he would have been also happy. We're different. We're conditional. Our happiness is depending upon having and not having. But that's illusion. It's false happiness. And when the false happiness is taken away, then it's, a false distress, because the real distress is forgetfulness of Krishna. And the real happiness is remembrance of Krishna in any circumstance. So it's a beautiful narration. There's many more details in the description of the pastime. But Krishna is showing us through his pastime the quality of one who has said yes to Krishna. You don't have to be impoverished to say yes to Krishna. You have to give things up to say it. But finding shelter in those things needs to be given up. Looking to Krishna, whatever arrangement Krishna makes for you, in practical ways. We make some endeavor, but not an over-endeavor. One of the causes of fall down, over-endeavor. You make some endeavor, and if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't come, it doesn't come. We're dependent upon Krishna for whatever comes, after all. Okay. So it's nearly 9 o'clock, I'm supposed to end. Let's see if there's some discussion. Do we have a portable microphone? 2 hands, 3 hands.
Hare Krishna.
You're on, go ahead.
I have a 2-part question. You mentioned we should hear in such a way that the message goes in, or we should read Srila Prabhupada's book in such a way that the message goes in the heart. So my question is, why it does not happen? And second part is, how...
Why which?
Why it does not happen that the message goes inside?
We're blocked.
And how do we address that?
Sadhana bhakti. Cheto darpana marjanam. Start with that. That's a short answer. There's a long answer in Anartana Vritti. There's many hour seminar on Anartana Vritti. There's clouds of anarthas and the mist of ignorance that's blocking our heart, like the rays of the sun are blocked. The rays of the sun aren't blocked. The rays of the sun is shining, but between our vision of the sun can be blocked by clouds and mist. The mist of ignorance, the clouds of anarthas. This is a phrase of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That's why we're blocked. We're covered with ignorance and offenses. The reaction to offenses is anarthas. So it doesn't go in. So now how to get rid of that? Anartana Vritti. How to do that? So there's the process of understand what the the ignorance is and what the anarthas are, and cultivate bhakti in an appropriate manner. In short, offenseless chanting. Or proper hearing and chanting. And you cultivate that. And gradually the mist of ignorance and the clouds of anarthas can be dissipated by the power of bhakti. But meanwhile, the power of bhakti is blocked by the power of anarthas. Anarthas have a blocking power that Krishna invests. It's a long description. Several hours, you can go listen online at Anartha Nivritti. That's what and why and what to do. Someone else? Had their hand up? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You said when Sudama went to Krishna, he observed how a Kshatriya has to honor a Brahmana and...
Krishna was exhibiting different features of his relationship with him.
And you made the point that it is so important that even in a spiritual world it is observed.
Varnashram is observed. Yes, there's Daivi Varnashram. And it's in the spiritual world.
So I want to understand.
Although they're not their bodies. Nor are we. Go ahead.
So, in our society, there is in the devotee community, there are devotees who are like Brahmanas.
Yeah.
And then there are outside a devotee community, some people they are engaged in some kind of Brahmanical work, so-called so I want to understand how should what do you exactly how we understand you should follow this. One thing you said, Devi Varnashrama, and other aspects.
Does anyone else have a hard time understanding because of this crummy sound system? Is there anything that can be done about the crummy sound system? Not at the moment, but for the evening. Or maybe just the microphone that has a line, we can do that maybe. Something. I got about 50%. I think your question is, how are we as practicing devotees in ISKCON to manifest Varnashram? Something like that. Something like that?
But more essence honoring Brahmanas, and so how we apply to other people also who are...
How do we do what?
Apply this principle.
How do we address ourselves to Brahmanas not in the Hare Krishna movement? That's your question? Huh? How do we honor Brahmanas within our movement as well as outside? That's your question? Yes. Okay. Well, who is a Brahmana? There's an essay Bhaktisiddhanta writes about who is a Brahmana and who is a Vaishnava. So Vaishnava Brahmanas and non-Vaishnava Brahmanas, or Brahmanas outside of ISKCON, they could be Brahmanas in a Vaishnava society. So it's a very broad question. But keep it short with respect. Now, if you're an acharya, then you may need to speak about the distinction between Brahminical quality and non-Brahminical quality. Because many persons who are in Brahmana position don't have the quality of a Brahmana. And an acharya may very well address that fact. You may not be in a position to address that fact. But at least within your heart and mind and intelligence, you should understand Brahminical quality is what a Brahmana is, whether they're Vaishnava Brahmana or a non-Vaishnava Brahmana outside of ISKCON. What I'm saying here is, I remember very clearly that 1975, there was a Mayavadi sannyasi walking around Mayapur. He had an ekadanda, he had, horizontal tilak, and it was kind of strutting around Mayapur. So the devotees asked Prabhupada, and strutting meaning he was a little obviously proud. So the devotees asked Prabhupada, what should we do when we see this Mayavadi sannyasi? And Prabhupada's answer immediately was, you pay your obeisances from a distance and don't associate. So non-ISKCON Brahmanas, there's in two categories, qualified and not qualified. Then two other, Vaishnava, non-Vaishnava Brahmanas. So we respect them, in formality at least. And qualified, there's a special appropriate respect that goes to them, although they may not be within ISKCON. And then why? Because we know they're dear to Krishna. Now, Krishna made a distinction. Like, for example, the Yajnik Brahmanas that refused to even talk to the cowherd boys, Krishna wasn't pleased with that. Anyway, so a lot depends upon their position. The short answer to your question, a lot depends upon their position and their meaning, their qualification. Brahmana means one who knows Brahman. That's the meaning. So who's that? Because they're in the position, we may show respect, but we also need to know whether they're knowing Brahman, or if they're Vaishnava Brahmanas outside of ISKCON, that they're following their sampradaya. So we respect that. And same, within ISKCON there's levels of Brahmanas. Someone that simply has received Brahminical initiation doesn't mean that person's a qualified Brahmana, or vice versa. Someone may not have Brahminical initiation, but they may have the quality of a Brahmana. So our attention goes, there's formality and there's qualification both. And so it depends. Anything else? Question up front here? Go ahead.
My question here is that it is one of the classic problems that I face is trying to strike a balance where
one of the practical problems I face is striking a balance.
Balance in what is a practical way of seeing when an endeavor is is balanced out of, because
what's a balanced endeavor look like? Depends. In very simple language, Prabhupada said, we don't make over endeavor. So what does that mean? We make a reasonable endeavor. And we don't get lazy on that side, and we don't make an over endeavor on the other side. If Krishna, that is to say, if Krishna wants, Krishna can crown some endeavor with success, and if it's not Krishna's wish, then he won't. And so we're ready to go whatever direction Krishna wants. But we make some reasonable endeavor, not over endeavor. His language is don't over endeavor for simple things. And one of the examples he would point to is temple construction. Now he wanted this Vrindavan temple, and he pushed for it to happen. Persons who needed such intense engagement, those are the persons he pushed. But in the general explanation to the devotees in general was, send some funds. Those that he knew had the capacity to do so. But not over-endeavor. So what's an over-endeavor? That's kind of the balance question. Well, it depends on the individual. When your sadhana is being sacrificed, that's a no-no. When your relationships are being compromised, that's a no-no. It's an over-endeavor. When you become stressed out because the endeavor is taking so much time, energy, and focus, that somebody says something that you find irritating and you snap at them, that's an over-endeavor. So it's kind of common sense. And different individuals have different capacities. Anything else? Okay. Yes? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This is a question from Kanak Manjari Mataji, so she asked me to translate it.
Okay.
So her question is, she said that today when she heard you singing Jai Radha Madhav and the Mahamantra, she had an experience that those vibrations were going into her heart, and it was a very enlivening experience. So her question is, what can she do so that her everyday hearing and chanting, she wishes that it has the same, those, when she hears every day and when she chants every day, those vibrations go into her heart as well. And her question is, what can she do?
I'll give a Borijan. Somehow your voice was very clear. And somehow the other persons, when they speak, it's not very clear. I don't think it's just because they pointed the device at me. Anyway, very clear. I'll give a Borijan answer. In fact, there's a longer version of something that's very short. When we're engaged in hearing and chanting, don't strive for peak experiences. That's his language. What do you strive for if you don't strive for peak experiences? You strive for your relationship with Krishna and minimally purification. Whatever the experience is subjectively, that's up to Krishna. Strive for purity and strive for connectedness with Krishna. And when that connectedness and purity are there, the experiences are what Krishna wants you to experience anyway. How's that? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.